Roland seems to be on a quest with their Zencore synth engine to bring together the retro and the modern synthesis engines that they've developed over a long period of time, make them work under a unified framework, and make them more accessible. And this Zencore engine is the one built into the Roland MC-101, among other devices. This means that the MC-101 should be perfect for something that also brings together the retro and the modern. Synthwave. And yes, that combination does work incredibly well. So today I'm going to walk you through the making of 2 jams on the Roland MC-101. So without any further ado, let's jump into the 101. All right, first of all, I'm going to play through a full version of the first jam that you heard in the intro and then walk you through it, and then we'll go into the second jam. Although I'll probably spend a lot of my time on this one since there's quite a bit going on and a lot of it translates to the second jam. But first of all, let's play some music. That is a super short version of the entire jam, so let's go into all the individual elements, starting off as usual with the drums. First of all, this is a standard like stock 80s kit built into the 101 with some modifications. Fairly punchy kick and snare. The snare does not have as much transient as I would like, and that is because if I go into the pad edit menu, it's got the key offset turned down a bit. Here's what it originally sounded like. It's got a better transient, but it's a little dinky. So down in pitch, a whole lot better. Kicks down in pitch a little bit as well. And these are also sent a bit more aggressively to the reverb, especially the snare. Hi-hat, also sent to the reverb a good bit, also turned down a good bit. Remember, your hi-hats are always too loud, and it's also panned ever so slightly to the right. I've also got the classic 80s clap, panned a little bit to the left, and then these toms are also panned around a little bit. Of course, pretty quiet, buried in the mix, sent to the reverb more than any other element. Nice, happy little synth pop groove. So let's move on to the main lead. This is where the Zencore engine really comes in clutch for this style of music, because this is like an authentic recreation of a Juno brass sound. I can't necessarily say on a scale from 1 to 10 how exactly authentic it is, because that's a bit before my time, and by a bit, I mean a lot. Some of y'all are old. But to my ears, it sounds pretty nice, and as far as I understand, Roland definitely put in the effort to recreate the Juno engine pretty well. So this is just a built-in preset. And it sounds lovely. And so in this case, I'm just using it as a lead. I believe I've made a little bit of modification in the settings. So stuff like I've sent a bit more to the delay, a bit more to the reverb, and I think I've probably increased the release a bit. Yeah, just a little bit so it rings out a little bit more. And that's this patch, which is just super nice. Fairly good Juno recreation just in this tiny little box, which is pretty incredible. And there's an entire expansion for the Zencore engine that's like a Juno recreation in its entirety, and I haven't played around with it yet, but I intend to eventually. This is a Jupiter recreation. And it's also lovely. I really like what Roland's got going on. I used to not give this engine enough credit, but at this point I've absolutely come around to it. Once again, this is just a built-in preset, and I've probably modified it just a little bit. Yeah, the release is once again up a bit, And I can also mess with like the cutoff and such. Let me just do like a little synth only mix. So with that, let's jump into the pad. This is another Juno patch. In this case, this is like a strings patch. Super nice patch. I've been guilty of overusing this already in just my own personal music creation. And then I've also got the other clip here. Hear the little bit of phasing with that chorus? It's lovely. Some classic 80s synth pop. And I've also got that same brass patch doing that little arpeggio thing. It's kind of a fun little element there. We can just kick back in. Tweak the balance of the mix a little bit, but hopefully you get the idea. That's basically what goes into making like a synthwave synth pop track for me on this thing. Going out of my way to select some Jupiter and Juno type patches, something vintagey, very authentically Roland, and then just getting the absolute most out of them and trying to maximize kind of a lush sound with the minimal track count. And hopefully I've been successful with that. And of course, lots of reverb and delay. So let's move on to the other beat. This one's not actually 100% MC-101. There's a sample on here that I'll talk about in a second. But first of all, let me just play the beat. So I did cheat a little bit. This track right here had quite a bit of a journey to get to this point. This started off as an arpeggio that I played on my OP1. I broke it out for the first time in a little while and was messing with the endless sequencer and came up with this little arpeggio part. And then I brought that into my DAW and added the Baby Audio plugin spaced out with this lovely kind of reversed delay thing going on and a bunch of reverb. So by itself, we've got this. And notice this is not a looper track. This is actually a drum track. And I'm just triggering it here. So if I wanted to add extra layers on these other pads, I totally could. I elected not to, but it's an option I like leaving open. And I'm just not particularly a fan of looper tracks. I think they're just a little bit superfluous since we've got sample tracks. Moving on to the drums, as we normally start with. This is fairly similar in setup to the previous one. Nice 80s kick, nice 80s snare with a good amount of reverb on it. This clap with a ton of reverb on it. A bit of a different hi-hat. And of course the classic 80s toms. In post, I would probably go out of my way to maybe pitch this down a tad and definitely compress it pretty heavily, really bring out the power of it, and maybe even add on another kind of lower reverb. But let's move on to this bass. I got some questions on my minimal techno jam about the bass, and this is the same patch I used in that one. I don't think this is explicitly based on any one synthesizer, but it's definitely got the classic Roland sound with that cranked up filter resonance. and then it's got some reverb and delay on it. It's a really nice patch. I've used this multiple times in multiple songs. Just playing these long, droned out notes. So we're starting to get into like interstellar territory here. And there's that Juno strings patch again. I told you I use this thing a lot. I was not joking. Super nice patch, once again, and it really fills out the mix nicely. That is it for the second beat. Not quite as much to show here, and it's fairly simple, but hopefully pretty effective. If you'd like to see me make more futuristic beats from scratch or see some other jams in kind of a similar style, you can click or tap the links on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. That'll do, donkey. That'll do.